Nikki Haley, great to see you.
It's great to be with you.
Well, let's see. Mike Pence, no longer in the race. Tim Scott. I can go down the list. Here you are, and rising. You got a guy named, I think his name is Trump, and he's in the race, and you got to get there through that. But what's been going on with this rise that we've been seeing?
You know, it's slow and steady wins the race. I mean, we have been building relationships and trust on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire and continuing to visit South Carolina. And people are excited for a new generational leader. They really are. And I think more than that, what we're hearing is they don't want another nail biter in a general election. They want to know that we can win more than that. And you look at the general election polls, Trump and Biden are pretty much head to head. On a good day, he might be up 2 or 4 points. I'm up 17 points. So that's not just about the presidency anymore. That's governorships, that's the Senate, that's the House. That's a mandate for us to get our economy back on track. That's a mandate for us to get our kids reading again in schools back to the basics. That's a mandate to finally close our border and to get law and order back in our country. And that's a mandate to make sure that we're strong so that no enemies ever want to threaten us. And so it really is, it would be nice for us to go in with a strong win that we could really change not just the presidency, but all of government in a way that we're really working for the people again.
I don't think there's a question, no doubt that you'd be a strong general election candidate. What about getting through the primary, getting through Donald Trump? There are folks, MAGA voices, who say it's time to coalesce around this president who's up 30, 40, 50, depending on what state you're in, points. What do you say to those folks?
I mean, they said, oh, there are 13 people in the race, nobody can ever do it. Well, now we're down to less than a handful. And you see I'm second in Iowa, second in New Hampshire, second in South Carolina. We got one more fella to catch up to, and we're moving. So, you know, the naysayers have always been naysayers. I defeated the longest serving legislator when I first ran for office. I was one of 5 opponents when I ran for governor. I was the Tea Party candidate, and no one gave me a chance. And we won. When I got to the UN, everybody said I didn't have enough experience, and we took the kick me sign off of our backs and were respected again at the UN. I'm used to naysayers, and I'm used to being scrappy and the underdog. Our goal is we're not going to stop until we get every Iowan's vote, every Granite Stater, every South Carolinian, and really get our country back on track. And the energy is good. You can feel the momentum on the ground wherever we go. People are excited.
Yeah, we saw that at the town hall tonight for sure. So this is a populist, more of a populist party now. It's different. It's a challenge for you. You've heard the criticisms from the MAGA folks, things that, you're a warmongering neocon, you're a globalist, you're establishment, you're disloyal because you said you would not run against Trump and now you are. What do you say to your critics who say all of that?
Just because they say it doesn't make it true. How can you call me establishment when I was the Tea Party candidate that ran for governor? How can you say that I'm a warmonger when I'm the wife of a combat veteran who's deployed right now? My goal is always to prevent war so that my husband and so many members of the military never have to fight. How can you go and say, that I'm not conservative on those levels when literally everything I've ever done has been conservative and strong and freedom loving and limiting the size of government? So they can say it doesn't make it true. I know what it is, but more importantly, my record shows it. And I think that speaks for itself.
But what about the follow-up here about, Donald Trump Jr. the other day said, you're a puppet of the billionaires is what he calls you. And, I understand a lot of this is campaign rhetoric, but there are people that are concerned about the Koch brothers endorsement. I say the Koch brothers, the Koch Foundation endorsement. But it's not just that. I mean, they're concerned about ties to Boeing, all this type of. Vivek Ramaswamy has been very, very challenging to you in terms of challenging your integrity, especially by bringing up the defense contractor stuff and saying that you're profiting from wanting to go to war.
Well, and that's why he's nowhere in the polls, because he has no credibility whatsoever. And I think you talk about, if there are any CEOs or anybody that are supporting me, the other guys are just mad because they're jealous. They would have loved to have that support. They want it too. It's just when it comes to me, they're going to complain about it. They can talk about defense contractors. I've never been a defense contractor. I don't have a defense contracting company. I don't do anything with that. Yes, I've worked with Boeing. We got started building planes in South Carolina. I'm very proud of Boeing and what we did together. I served on the board for 10 months for Boeing. That's it. And the reason I got off the board of Boeing is because when COVID hit, They wanted a corporate bailout. And I've always opposed corporate bailouts, so I did what I've always said I was going to do, and I respectfully walked away. But I still love that company. They build us Air Force planes. They build us, commercial planes. They're a great company. But these guys are just saying things because they're trying to see what sticks. Nothing sticks. At the end of the day, the American people want an accountant that knows what it takes to get inflation down, stop the spending, stop the borrowing, and getting our economy back on track. They want to know that we're going to secure the border. They want to know that we're going to start having government serve the people instead of the people working for government. And that's what I bring to the table.
Let me ask you a little bit about, there's been talk about you as vice president, and I know what you're going to say. I don't play for second. I got it. I've seen the line, and it's authentic. I get it. But Ron DeSantis has ruled it out. Says, no way, I'm not going to do it. Okay, are you going to rule it out?
I don't play for second.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's offensive when anybody says that, she wants to be vice president. You don't do something like this to be vice president. You don't sacrifice emotionally, mentally, physically, with your family, everything to come in for second. That's not me. I've never done second a day in my life. I'm not going to start now. I'm doing this because we have a country to save. Everybody knows that our country is in disarray and the world is on fire. And I don't trust anybody else to fix it. And I'm determined to get that done. And we're going to get it done. And the people want us to get that done. You can feel it. And that's why you're seeing us move in the polls, is because they're tired. With me, there's no drama. There are no vendettas. There's no whining. It's just work. It's what I've always done is work.
But you're not going to rule it out because you're not going to rule it out.
It's not even a conversation. And it doesn't matter what candidate wants me to answer it. I don't play for second. I don't know what more I can say than to get them to understand that.
Fair enough. Let me ask you a little bit about some policy issues. The border. You talked about the border tonight, a lot of different things, and we can go through that. But what about a moratorium at the border or closing the border? There's a lot of folks, especially in the MAGA conservative movement, that want to say enough is enough. Let's close the border. Quite frankly, what that means, has to be defined. But how do you feel about closing the border until Congress can get their act together?
We need to close the border. I mean, you look at the fact that right now America's acting like it's September 10th. We better remember what September 12th felt like. It only takes one person. And you have 8 million people that have come to that border. I mean, what we have said is we are going to defund sanctuary cities once and for all. We're going to do what I did in South Carolina when we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. We're going to do a national e-verify, require businesses to prove the people they're hiring are here legally. Let's defund sanctuary cities. Let's put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. And let's go back to remain in Mexico so no one even comes into the U.S. to process. They have to process from there. And instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport. We truly do have to do this. You look at over 1,000 people have come from Yemen and Lebanon and Iraq, and that doesn't even count Afghanistan. It only takes one. We've got to get this right. This is a dereliction of duty of what's happening.
You've talked about your immigration proposals. This is what you just laid out. But when you say we've got to close the border, what do you mean exactly? Because I think that's different things to different people. When you say we've got to close the border, what does that look like specifically?
To illegal immigrants, we have to close the border.
Physically close the border.
I think if there's certain areas we have to build a wall or do whatever, we do it. I mean, if you've got to put barriers in the water to keep them from coming over, you do it. Whatever it takes. We are a country of laws. The second you stop being a country of laws, you give up everything this country was founded on. That's what's happening. And look at what Biden just did. He gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary protective status. Do you know what that does? I saw it at the United Nations. It has them call their family members and say, come on over, because that's 500,000 social security numbers, 500,000 driver's licenses. That's incentivizing them to come. We've got to show it's not worth the trip. You're not going to make it in. And we've got to make sure that whoever does make it in, they go back. We cannot allow anyone to have safe haven, because if they do, they will keep coming. We've got to start deporting people back.
What about a moratorium? What about, in other words, holding off on illegal immigration? In other words, no one else is coming in the country until we can figure out the problem. A moratorium.
Legal immigration is different, right?
I mean illegal immigration.
Illegal immigration, we have always had those who were persecuted against and those refugees that have come in for certain. We've always done asylum, but we vetted them. David, they're not vetting anybody right now. And to me, honestly, stop the whole thing until you can figure out what's going on. Not one person should be coming into our country until we know that they are being vetted and we know exactly what's happening. Right now, you don't have that. And look at our cities everywhere. They complain of homelessness. The idea that you would have a veteran thrown out in New York City for an illegal immigrant to go in, that's not America. That's not us. We can't do that.
Israel, as it relates to the Gazan refugees, what's America's role in this? I mean, Egypt doesn't want to take them. Jordan doesn't want to take them. And what do you think about America?
Isn't that very telling?
Well, of course,
that they don't want to take them?
Absolutely. So I'm assuming the position, therefore, is America should not take them either.
Absolutely not. They should go to Hamas-loving countries. Iraq, Qatar, Turkey. Those 3 countries, they can go to that. But it's very telling that here you've got the people in Gaza that Egypt doesn't even want them. You know, that none of those countries want them. You know why? Because they don't know which ones are Hamas and which ones aren't. Why should anybody else take them if that's the case? And so it is not Israel's problem. It's not America's problem. If those countries like Qatar and Turkey and Iran feel so deeply for the people of Gaza, they should take them.
Let me ask you about Israel, excuse me, as it relates to the Biden administration. They're sending money to Iran. They're sending money to the Palestinian Authority, which has sanctioned and said okay to the October 7th attack. They're sending money through the UN RWA, UNRWA. So are they, in essence, is the Biden administration, is Biden himself literally supporting Hamas?
You know, what's hard to stomach is when I was at the United Nations, you know, we got out of the Human Rights Council. I was the first to put forth a proposal that declared Hamas a terrorist organization. We got a majority of the vote at the UN, believe it or not, and they moved the ball and said we had to have 2/3. We got ourselves out of giving any American money to the Palestinian Refugee Organization. We got out of the Iran deal. All of these things that we did, Biden just undid it. He fell all over himself to get back into the Iran deal. Then he turned around and he lifted the sanctions so that China could give billions of dollars to Iran. And then you see on October 7th, the most horrific thing happened. And I'm haunted by it because I gave a speech at the UN 5 years ago that talked about the fact that we knew Hamas had these maps. And if they got through the barrier, it was how they were going to kill as many Jews as fast as they could. And now it happened. But I've watched what I saw happen at the United Nations all the time. It's everyone's quick to run to Israel for her defense when she gets hit. But then they're quick to attack her when she hits back. America would be furious too. This should be personal for America. 33 Americans were butchered on that day. We have American hostages right now. And Biden, the idea that he said all the right words in the beginning, but now you're going to go and tell Israel, oh, you can do this, but you can't do that, or oh, you need to finish it in a couple of weeks. No. Israel had to watch their people beheaded, babies burned, girls raped, and their bodies dragged through the streets of Gaza. And what did they say? Death to Israel, death to America. This is personal for America. And God help us if we don't get this right with Israel.
The Biden administration, they're complicit, do you believe, in what Hamas is doing because they're funding Israel and they're funding, in essence, Hamas?
Let's be clear. It is Obama 2.0. Obama was always an Iranian sympathizer. And so if you're an Iranian sympathizer, there would be no Hamas without Iran. There would be no Hezbollah without Iran. There wouldn't be the Houthis without Iran. And so now Biden is carrying forward that exact same thing. And that's incredibly dangerous when you try and appease a group that says death to America.
Yeah. What should happen with some of these pro-Palestinian, folks that we see protesting on the campuses? What do you want to see done? They keep calling them pro-Palestinian protests. Look, they're pro-Hamas protests. Can we just be clear on that?
Yes.
And I don't know how you feel, if you agree with that, but what should happen at these college campuses?
First of all, look at all of these universities. They have been taking foreign money for so long. You hear a lot about the Chinese money. Arab money has been going into these universities for years. So don't be surprised you're seeing pro-Hamas protests. We have to go to every university and say, you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over, and get that infiltration out of our universities. But we also have to get that infiltration out of social media. Right now, you look in social media, there are millions of foreign bots. I mean, you look at what happens. You see these pro-Hamas things that are up on our social media, we have got to get our social media companies to go and show us what they're doing with these foreign bots. These aren't even people behind these.
You got hit on that
And
for
all
federal intervention on that.
Look, I'm not saying government should do anything. I'm saying this is a national security threat. These social media companies need to show us what they are doing to eliminate these foreign bots. I saw at the United Nations, Russia, China, and Iran always said this was the cheapest form of warfare. You know, we have to ban TikTok. India just banned TikTok because of the social disruption. Nepal did the same thing. Why does America have to be the last one to realize they are tearing us apart by allowing all of these things to happen on social media? You had bin Laden's letter on TikTok a couple weeks ago, and people suddenly justifying what happened on 9/11. That's not Americans doing that. That's our enemies doing that, trying to infiltrate that into our country. We've got to put a stop to foreign bots. I will always fight for Americans having freedom of speech. I don't want the Russians, Iranians, and Hamas having freedom of speech, and that's happening right now on social media.
You mentioned TikTok, which made me think, excuse me, of Vivek Ramaswamy's vicious attack on you the other day at the debate. What is it about Vivek Ramaswamy? How does he get under your skin? Do you detest him?
I mean, he doesn't get under my skin. He's clearly not running for president. You know, that's why I said at the last debate, I'm not going to even mess with him anymore. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not running for president. And I think that we've got to look at who is really serious about taking this country to a better place, bringing out the best in Americans so that we can go forward. We are so distracted right now. That's got to stop. And Americans are tired. And that's why I think it is time that we get things back to work. It is going to be 8 really hard-working years to get us back on track, but we can do it because America's always had an amazing ability to self-correct. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know where up is. We're there. We got to start looking up and start getting this right.
A couple last culture war questions. My goodness, my voice. Excuse me. On abortion, I know what you said about consensus, and it's just not there. I got that. But what about the federal government's role in this banning of abortions? Do you think it should be at the state level, or do you think the federal government even has a role in that?
So I think the unelected justices got it right when they sent it back to the hands of the people. That's where it should have always been.
So it should be a state.
Let the people decide. There's a state's issue, but I do think there is a federal role that could happen. The thing is, you've got to do it where we get 60 Senate votes. David, right now, what's our number one goal? How do we save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can? You don't do it by demonizing the issue. You do it by humanizing the issue. And you do it and you say, okay, if we're going to do a federal law, let's find out where 60 people can agree. Can't we agree to ban late-term abortions? Can't we agree to encourage adoptions? Can't we say doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them? Can't we go and say we're not going to have a state law that says to a woman who has an abortion that she's going to jail or get the death penalty? Let's humanize this issue. That's how you'll get more people on board, and that's how you save more babies and support more moms. That's what I'm trying to do. They've divided this country enough over this issue. We need to now bring this country together over this issue.
On gender-changing surgeries, you have, and DeSantis did misrepresent your position on this the other day, but you have said that basically folks, under 18, that should not be happening, right? I'm just trying to understand exactly, because there was a one time, I think you had talked about a 12-year-old saying that the law should have nothing to do with it or something along those lines.
No.
Clear it up for me, please.
I mean, Ron is lying because Ron is losing. I have always said, I don't think any child should have any gender-altering surgery before the age of 18. You can't have a tattoo until 18. Why are we going to let them do any sort of gender changes before the age of 18? So across the board, I don't think that should ever happen. And that includes any gender-changing drugs. Nothing that's going to permanently harm them until they are an adult and can make their own decision. Once they're 18, we're a free country, you do what you want. But before 18, no, we have to protect those kids.
To be, excuse me, to be clear, what you're saying though is that a personal opinion, or is that something where from a federal standpoint you believe that there should be federal involvement?
I think there should be federal involvement. You should not have any gender altering anything done to a child before the age of 18.
Yeah. Finally, Ron DeSantis, you typically don't criticize him much on the campaign trail. You did tonight. Why was that? He said a lot of stuff. I'm just curious as to why you decided to do that.
You know, it's interesting because if you look at all the town, we've done over 120 something town halls. I don't talk about any of the other candidates because we've got a country to save. Nobody wants to hear that. But here you have, Ron has spent millions of dollars, and every one of his commercials has been fact checked and been from Newsmax to CNN have said it's false. And he's just throwing things out there to see what sticks. And finally, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna lie, then I'm gonna tell the truth about you. Why don't you tell everybody that you said you wouldn't raise the debt ceiling and you approved hundreds of billions of dollars while you were in Congress? Why don't you tell everyone that you led the charge on banning the renewable fuel subsidies? Why don't you go and say that, yes, you were for you banning fracking and offshore drilling? He did that. It's on record. You know, why don't you say, if you say you're pro-Israel, then why did Ron DeSantis bring the most anti-Israel person to Iowa to campaign, who voted with the squad against doing away with anti-Semitism on college campuses?
Oh, massive.
And against, yes, I mean, like, don't sit there and lie about me. If you've got to lie about someone to win, you don't deserve to win. And I have been out there trying to tell people where we're going to take this country and what we're going to do. He spent millions of dollars lying about me. We'll see where that's getting him, but I'm going up in the polls.
And my final question to you, how do you convince folks in MAGA, and let's be honest, there are different strains of MAGA. I like to call it light pink, red, and a little bit dark. How do you go ahead and try to convince at least people that are willing to listen to you that they need to ditch Donald Trump because they're in on Trump and go with you?
Well, first of all, I don't think we need to label members of the Republican Party. I think that's happened for too long. I think that we are a country of freedom-loving Americans that want to see government just continue to do what it's supposed to do. Government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. So if we're going back to the basics. But what I will tell you is, I think President Trump was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies. I had a good working relationship with him. But rightly or wrongly, chaos follows him. We all know that. Chaos follows him.
The left,
and we can't
the left
be
has been part of that.
But we can't be a country in disarray and have a world on fire and make it through 4 years of chaos. We can't. I said rightly or wrongly. So it could be, I mean, all I know is we need stability and we need strength and we need to start answering the issues of tomorrow and not looking back to the past. And we can't keep going back to that negativity and baggage of the past. We've got too much at stake. And look, I'm doing this because I don't want my kids to live like this anymore. I want them to have a country that they can be proud of. I want to know that they can live a better life. Right now, 81% of Americans don't think their kids are going to have as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We have a country to save, but we have an opportunity to get this right. And I'm telling you, I'm going to put everything I've got into it to make sure that not only do we win, but when we win, that we lead in a way that makes Americans proud. They deserve that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great.